This one is going to be on a very, very dark subject that nobody wants to address. Yes, it's there, but nobody cares. Why do people lose the will to reproduce themselves? We are social creatures. We need contact, especially growing up, contact. We need to be seen. We need to be noticed. We need to be praised. Healthy interactions with others. We need to be encouraged. We need to be supported. We need absolutely respect. If lucky, some advice, you know. And of course, this is all reciprocal. You do it yourself as well. You receive and you give. So this is what makes a healthy family, right? That's what a family unit is all about. It's about this unity. It doesn't separate, it doesn't segregate, it unifies. The family unifies. Well, at least it's supposed to be like that until communists decided to break everything apart. So, what happens is in these past, and I'm saying this happens, since forever, but lately it's been happening a lot more often, and it's actually the origin of the degradation of Western civilization. These past generations, you could say since the 60s, this has been growing. There's people that go all their lives without being noticed. They are invisible, either in family or with friends or in school, whatever. They are invisible. Nobody notices them, you know. Nobody notices them, and they eventually start feeling or believing that this is how it's supposed to be. When a person is invisible for long periods of time with no healthy interaction, chronic loneliness may cause this thoughts and feelings of not wanting to have children. I mean, you've had a pretty much isolated and segregated life, so you're not thinking about I'm going to have children. Of course not. One of the biggest tragedies is when you have actually family, but they don't notice you. Their tone is completely off. Whenever they open their mouths, it's never a gentle voice from parents or sisters, siblings, or parents or siblings. It's not a soft, gentle voice. No, it's a sharp screech. It sounds critical. It sounds heavy. And 90% what comes out of their mouths is just negativity. And the individual just checks out. You're not supposed to put up with their bullshit, even if they're for your family. So this started happening more and more when uh, two parent, salary was required. Father, got infected by the harshness of reality, the harshness, competitiveness, the dirtiness of the world and politics and whatnot. So men are good at shielding, evil. Some of them fall into despair, of course, and they drown themselves in alcohol or something like that to cope. But women used to stay shielded from this evil, and they were, of course, closest to the children. So before they left the household, there was still some praise, some encouragement, some support, respect, advice between mother and children, at least. That's why the myth of the bad father comes in. He doesn't even pay attention. No, you don't know the stress of the real world. Women were like, oh, we can do it as well. Look at what's happening, right? What's happening is that everybody now is taking fire. from the world, because the world is a nasty place. And they don't seem to be able to switch, to leave the bullshit at work, and when they return home, they are unable to switch it off. And this is projected over the children. No wonder they don't want to communicate with you. No wonder they don't want children themselves, because it just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. It gives this message to children that the world is a nasty place. Mommy and daddy are constantly stressed, constantly angry. Whenever they open their mouths, it's not gentle and loving. It's always screeches and, that sounds like criticism and heavy. And children are intimidated, becoming grown ups. So lots of them actually don't want to grow up. That's why we see so many, just hanging in the cellar, playing video games. They are like, no, being a grown up is bullshit. And my parents didn't praise me and didn't, encourage me into facing the real world. So I'm just going to say no to that bullshit. It's too much toxicity. I mean, it's the hardest thing for a man is to see women or their mothers in stress, women and their mothers, worried about the work, because in our little brains, if you haven't noticed, it's almost like we are seeing children when we are looking at women. Well, not physically, of course, but overall. And it's really not good for our psyche when we see a woman stressed with work and acting and behaving like a man, and you're like, no, that's just not normal. You shouldn't be doing that. You should be loving. You should be, in a field of flowers, playing with fuzzy rabbits and raising beautiful children and telling them, tales about witches and dragons, fairy tales, so they could learn from early on that the world is polluted with evil and whatnot. That's what you ought to be doing, not abandon them, going to work in some job, be constantly, bombarded with pollution and negativity, and then leave the children in the care of strangers like government so they can, thoroughly indoctrinate them in socialism. That's fucking messed up. So people grow up in this environment, and in this past generation, children that was born in the 2000s, for instance, they don't want kids. They don't want kids. This is just doesn't make any sense. So people overall want peace. They want reciprocity, love, and if not, little by little, the love for life starts fading away, and parenting children as well. They are all focused on working their salary job and paying taxes. That's pretty much what they've been raised to do. Modern parents are emotionally drained from the absurdity of modernity, for the absurdity of progress, and the religion that's proposed is really, empty and without any meaning. They gave them atheism, which is an annihilation religion. And whenever they get home, like I said, they just can't switch off. They can't put a nice face. Children, up until they get uh, s- affected by the real world, they are still in the spiritual realm, and they ought to develop a personality. They ought to develop an ego that is, very, comforting, very, So I agree that children should get out of the house around 12, not before. They have to develop a backbone first. They have to develop, quote unquote, an immune system. And that is within mommy and daddy, cheering them up, filling them with love and reciprocity and etc. and at the age of 12 eventually, go back to school. But that also implies they already know how to read and write, because that's what mommies used to do. They used to teach children how to read, write, all those things before they went to school. So actually, people went to university. There was a minimal age. I don't know if it was 14. That's when you went to university, and you were supposed to know the trivium. Back when it was, you're supposed to know the trivium, which is language, know how to debate, develop reasoning, spontaneity, infanting answers, that sort of thing, the trivium. Uh, they were supposed to know the trivium, and that included also reading languages, your original language, of course, and maybe Latin, because everything in the past was in Latin. Anything that mattered. I've heard Latin, ancient Greek, Pali, Sanskrit, and Egyptian was the languages of the angels, because it was metaphysical language, Metaphysical language is something that encapsulated the spiritual and the physical. So it was a language is very orientated towards analyzing reality. Trivium is, part of it, I would say. Um, so yeah, this is just what I think. I'm not a specialist in anything. So overall, if you are invisible for long periods of time, from family or from society in general, you kind of start, taking it as your life. You're invisible, and that's it. And being invisible, you know, creates or generates all sorts of new behaviors. Yes, and now there's all sorts of derogatory terms, to point the finger. Oh, look, they call them an incel, and now it has a bad connotation about it. Incel in the beginning just meant involuntary celibate. It was involuntary. Now they are saying it's voluntary, but they are hijacking the term and twisting it around. They're saying it's voluntary. You're doing this on purpose. No, it's not. So, love is the force that makes the wheels turn. It's not hatred. It's not. If you pervert things in the other direction, you're gonna, mess up everything. Mess up everything. Unfortunately, we have for leaders, quote unquote, our leaders nowadays have all come out of these economic schools, of Germany and Austria and whatever. And they only see numbers, they only see Excel pages, they don't see the heart, they don't see anything, the heart, feelings, emotions, love, they don't see reciprocity, they only see numbers. And I mean, no wonder why, these weird religions are making a comeback. Um, so when a population is so demoralized, because that's what it is, and they lose the ability or the feeling or the wanting of reproducing themselves, they are just, signaling to the world, look, our time is over. Who wants to take our place? That's when a civilization, a group of people, a tribe, whatever, decides to not replace themselves, they are inviting someone else to come in. And people coming in, it's so curious. Nobody wants to assimilate, they just want to pillage. If you haven't noticed, they just want to pillage. If someone wants to come through the normal ways, legally, they are ostracized, they are harassed, they are, it's a mountain of paperwork, that takes years. But if you come the criminal way, nobody's doing anything to block. It's so weird, right? Nobody's doing anything to block your entrance. So it doesn't make any sense, does it? People in charge are seeing the world backwards and upside down. They have no clue how to deal with the real world. All right, I've talked for 15 minutes. Have a nice day.